So we've looked at three different forms of the quadratic equation or quadratic function and how you might go about sketching if you're given a function in one of those forms. So we've got intercept form, which is something like this. These A's are not the same in each context here, just by the way. So we've got a number outside, one factor model, and a second factor. We've got turning point form, where HK is the turning point. And we've got general form, ax squared plus bx plus c. Now, it should be pointed out that you can more or less move freely between each of the three forms. The only exception is that if the quadratic formula does not have any x-intercepts, you will not be able to move into this form. But you can always take the intercept form and turn it into general form, or turn it into turning point form. You can always take the general form and turn it into turning point form, and often but not always turn it into intercept form. You can always take the turning point form and turn it into intercept form. Almost always, though, the only time you want to transform it is if you've got it in general form and you think it would be easier to get information out by turning it into turning point form or intercept form. Okay, but you can move freely through them, through things. So I thought I might just give you the strengths and weaknesses of each one. And if you've done some exercises now, you probably already know this. So let's have a look at the turning point first of all. Of those three forms, guess which one gives you the capacity to work out the turning point the easiest. If you said the turning point form, you would be quite correct. Turning point form is quite easy to work out, the turning point. If you've got it in intercept form, I would say that that's probably not too bad, but it's not that easy. It's okay, but it's not that bad. You do it by looking at the midpoint between the x-intercepts. If you've got it in from the general form, I would say that the turning point is kind of, it's okay if you use negative b on 2a. It's not as bad as intercept form, but you can always use the midpoint between the x-intercepts as well. If you've got, what about the x-intercepts? Well, have a bit of a guess about which one would be the best for x-intercepts. Yeah, it's the intercept form. No one's surprised by that, are they? So that's a smiley for the x-intercepts. Easy, 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 using the null factor law. In turning point form, I would say it's okay. You can solve it. It's not a hard solve, but certainly not as straightforward as the intercept form. And for the general form, I would say it's probably the hardest. It's not that hard, but the quadratic formula, which is what you would use to work out the x-intercepts, has its own challenges in terms of lots of number manipulation. And y-intercept. Well, the general form, I would say, has the y-intercept in the easiest form because it's basically c, isn't it? Or 0, c. And of the other two, I'm not meaning to make three colors for each, but I reckon I am going to. I'd probably say that the y-intercept is okay from intercept form. It's just a matter of multiplying C, E, and A together, basically. So it's not too bad. And for turning point form, for the y-intercept, I'd probably rate it the same. I don't think it's okay. It's just substituting 0 in and solving. It's not that bad. It's not awful. So yeah, that's how I'd rate them. Practicing all three forms is really important. You may feel like I've seen students just do turning point form all the time for everything because they like the idea of just having one rule and doing it all. And I get that, but really what they're exposing is they haven't practiced the other forms enough in order to be well practiced at it. Because what you really want is not to be forced to use the only tool you're familiar with, but instead be familiar with a lot of tools and then use them. Okay, so when would you when would I use or at least move between the forms? And I should point that out. You can move between the forms when you're trying to sketch as well. So you very well could take a function and say, well, I'm going to use completing the square to work out the turning point. I'm going to use putting into intercept form, factorizing, in order to work out the x-intercepts. And because it's in general form, I can work. So you could do that. You could, if that sort of works for you, that's not a terrible thing to do at all. Probably not the most efficient way of doing it, I suspect. But there you go. So when would I move between one of these form, the general form, to one of these other ones? And that's what I'm going to just finish off on here. This one here, you might want to pause the video and think about it as well. Is it worth, what you're really saying is it worth changing to one of the other forms, or is it just, you just might as well keep it the way it is? So pause the video and think, would you keep it the way it is, or would you change it to one of the other forms? And if so, which one? Okay, hopefully you paused and did that, but let me give you my take on it. I look at this and I can see that 4 2s are 8, 4 plus 2 is 6. I can easily convert that into intercept form. So I would convert that to intercept form and go from there. From general form, I'd have the y-intercept already. From the intercept form, I can solve it fairly straightforward, and then I'd probably just take the midpoint of the two intercepts and go from there. This one here, number 2, I reckon go for turning point form. Its numbers aren't too hard. I can certainly factorize these first two with a common factor of 2 and still have some nice, neat numbers to work with. So that works out okay. So turning point forms would seem to be the most efficient way to work out the turning point, and I can work out the x and y intercept fairly straightforward as well. I got the y-intercept already, it's known. Thirdly, this one here is going to be, I'm going to leave it in general form. If I take out a common factor of 5, I'm going to have x squared plus 3 on 5. It's going to be a horrible turning point form manipulation. I can't really see how this is going to factorize easily. Maybe it does. In fact, I can see that it does, actually. I didn't mean it for it to be so easy. But, you know, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. And so I'd go straight to using the quadratic formula to work out the x-intercepts and then the y-intercept from here and so on. So, yeah, that's basically it. There's no hard and fast rule, but more or less, whenever you're given a quadratic function to graph, you should think about, is it better to leave it as it is, or do I change the form so that I can use it, so that I can use the special properties of the other forms to get some information out more easily? Or maybe you're going to use more than one method. That's up to you to decide.